that we witnessed, macros have come back to being supportive. Do you think that will cushion sentiment and, build a case for buying again in the market at these levels?
I think there's definitely value emerging in the mid-cap sector. I think we're also seeing a lot of distressed sales happening as well by NBFCs, by, certain companies are trying to reduce debt, and therefore there are a lot of assets for sale in India. So I think there'll be a lot of competition for capital because there is a lot of distress as well in beyond the mid-cap space, even in the unlisted space. We are seeing a lot of deals, I think, coming up that would need capital. So I think we have to see how that competition for capital is going to play out. And therefore, wherever there is value, I think there is going to be an opportunity to make money longer term.
In case you missed it, it is Tanvir's birthday today. So we wished her a happy birthday already. Maybe it's your turn now.
Happy birthday, Tanvir. I hope this year is great for you and the channel and the markets.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks very much. Done.
Okay. Spotlight Tanvir. But Punita, this year we're hoping that it's going to be great for politics as well and how the markets perceive it. Today you've got the all-important Madhya Pradesh state as well going to elections, and soon we'll have Rajasthan results as well out, so would Chhattisgarh. Do you sense that there is a lot of nervousness around the state elections because in some ways they're being looked at as the grand semi-finale to the mega one, the 2019 elections?
So I'll have to be politically correct as well.
You may want to make a disclosure as well here.
But I think, I think the state elections are definitely being watched, but I'm not sure they're going to necessarily be a precursor to what we see in the general election, because in the general election, you are definitely voting for a prime minister, whereas in the state elections, you're voting for a chief minister, and those candidates can have different pull in their communities. And so I think while it's very important what the state elections outcome is, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the same way in the general election.
So, Punita, what's been your portfolio strategy? I mean, you're not sounding all that bullish, but yet you are able to spot value in the mid-cap space. So, in this decline, have you added, and if you've added, give us a flavor as to what themes or what businesses are on your radar?
So some high quality NBFCs, I think are where the current correction has thrown up some decent value. I think the CapEx cycle still seems to be reasonably robust, particularly with government spending. So I think there is some opportunity in the capital goods space, but you have to be very selective. I think the large banks are fairly well positioned where the valuations are because they are able to buy up a lot of the NBFCs portfolios at very high discounts. So I think that's another place where the valuations are still very, very attractive, particularly some of the large PSU banks. And then I think you have to be stock specific in most of the other sectors. I think in a defensive kind of market where we are in right now, typically one tends to move to high dividend yield, pharma, IT, etc. But I think in those sectors, some of it is already played out, and you have to be very company specific, particularly in pharma. So I think that's sort of where right now the action seems to be more in financials and select mid-cap stocks.
Consumer space, and all this talk about Nestle eyeing Horlicks at very steep valuations. If there's one expensive story in India that's consumer, but at any given point in time they have enough takers.
If you look historically in India, either you can make a lot of money trading or you can make a lot of money holding, buy and hold. And if you want to, I think you need to have a little of both. So if you, particularly where we are today, you also need high quality companies in your portfolio, and consumer tends to be those companies with decent ROEs, but they are not the kind of companies that you can expect to make a lot of money over the next 6 months to a year, but they're steady growth companies and the valuations are always high. So I think you always need to have some of those in your portfolio, but you have to hold them for the long term, and you have to be very patient because they can be periods of cyclical recoveries when these will underperform. But if you keep holding them over a long period of time, you'll probably do okay.
Punita, Indian markets have managed to outperform this fall. I mean, China has just gone through a downward spiral. Chinese internet stocks have got smoked. There are issues with other emerging markets as well. So do you think more than attractiveness, compulsion could be at play? And when US markets are declining, money will automatically start migrating back into emerging markets, and within emerging markets, maybe you're left with India, to some extent Vietnam, which is a small market, or Taiwan, which is again a small market. So sometimes, it is compulsion which forces you to buy stocks. And is India in that bracket right now?
I wouldn't say it's compulsion. HSBC just came up with their report on the world in 2050, and in fact, sorry, 2030. Their predictions were, and this is what global investors are seeing, that China is going to be the #1 economy at 25 trillion, US a close second, and India a far third at about 5 to 6 trillion. So the gap between the Indian economy and the Chinese and the US economy is going to remain very high, but India is going to overtake a lot of other developed markets. So India has a lot of potential to be one of the top economies in the world. And it is also less affected by all the protectionism risk that we are seeing. So I think that itself is going to be a driving force for investors to continue to be investing in India. Now, there are smaller markets that I think also need to be looked at in the Southeast Asia region, because the Chinese risk can be hedged to some extent, and the Chinese themselves are hedging by moving a lot of facilities, and the companies in the US, et cetera, are also beginning to have a lot of facilities in Vietnam and in other Southeast Asian countries to offset the tariff protectionism that is coming from towards China. So I think there are, there's actually legitimate reasons. It's not just that it's going to be because there is nothing else to invest in, but I think there are legitimate reasons why people will gravitate to these markets.